In a land of primordial darkness with barren, icy wastes stretching below treacherous, jagged mountains, said to contain the very doorway to Helheim itself, a place for the dead whose soul did not die in battle. A young hero Baldur, blessed by his mother the goddess Freya herself, finds himself trapped in the dark halls of Nibelheim, bleak and treacherous, with the bubbling, boiling spring of Fergelmir at its centre. Arguably, Nibelheim is the most nightmarish of the 9 kingdoms, and sealed with his beloved wife and partner Nanna, Baldur and her bear witness to the story of every living thing. Hela, ruler of the underworld and daughter of Loki, agrees to release the couple should every living thing in existence weep for the young man. So inspired by the heroics of the young, brave, semi-divine hero Hermod, Freya calls out to the planet to weep for her child, and the voices of all wail out in mourning, their voices carried on the wind. All that is, except for Loki, the shape-shifting trickster who, in the form of the giant Thok, he does not weep for the young hero, refuses to cry, indifferent to the pain of the entire world. Forced to remain trapped in Nibelheim because of Loki's hatred, Baldur is condemned to a life of dampness and misery. Never again would he grace the land of the living with his gladdening light and hopeful exuberance. Until, that is, the final days of Ragnarok draw near, a day of calamity and ruin where the sun goes dark for 3 long winters and war erupts across the planet, brother killing brother, gods battling gods, and the day that Baldur becomes free of his shackles, aided by the brother Hermod, described as Hermod the Brave, hero who rides the back of Sleipnir for several days and nights to aid his brother. A day that the beautiful female Norns who nourish the roots of Yggdrasil with magical water, who have guided the fates and destiny of men forward. It is a battle foreseen by the Volva, Viking shamanic seeresses who, with the ability to see into the future, she spots an image of a world post-Ragnarok where life is restored to the planet, where the earth reappears from the sea, where the land flourishes and eagles fly through the sky, passing beautiful waterfalls to hunt fishes on previously barren mountains. She sees a future of 2 brothers, Baldur and Hod, walking together across the plains of this new world, the latter resurrected from the punishment of inadvertently causing a brother's death. The rules of the cosmos are rewritten. The brothers regale their tales and they set to rebuilding the world anew, until Ragnarok calls upon their fates once more. What is good, my fellow peasants, and welcome to what will be the first of a series of vids aimed to overthink one of FF7's core plot elements, but is really just me making an excuse to explore the juiciest of lore, either directly or unintentionally inspiring the story of this game. Now, before I start, I'd like to thank Mike Gallagher and plug his research on what's been a mind-blowing read. I've loved it. It's about the weave of Norse mythology that Square have also carefully sewn into this game, and while what we will be discussing in these vids has a lot of my own interpretation and flourish added, including a chapter not included in Mike's book, but it has so many cool similarities and parallels to what we're going to be theorizing today and across these videos that we've been discussing, and he's a great guy. So if you want to check that book out, if you're both an FF and a mythology nerd, I'll leave a link in the description. But without further ado, let's synaptic net dive in. So the topic I'm going to use to string all these concepts and things I want to discuss under a single banner of is the question of, where does Cloud derive his power? How is he so OP? And I discussed this in the live theory diving sesh, in which you guys contributed so many good ideas, some wacky, some really straightforward. I've even had just better and better ideas contributed since, and honestly they've been blowing my mind. It's actually really contextualized a lot of the FF7 stories in ways I've never seen it before. Now, from explaining the gravity and the actual reason for Sephiroth's return in the remake, all the way up to memory shamanism. Yeah, memory shamanism. This is going to get wacky. It's going to get tinfoil hat-ish. So be sure to subscribe and put that notification bell on to see each installment of this discussion as it lands. And I do recommend you hear all of these options out, at least with an open mind, because I know on face value, the question of like where Cloud gets his power from, it seems like a really obvious answer to some. The super soldier Mako enhancements in his body, or some say the power of friendship. Others point out, well, he's the MC and this is an RPG. His plot armor is thick and his anime logic broad. It's a high fantasy game, Pez. Try to figure out power level logic will be your undoing, sir. Thing is, I am totally not dismissing that it could be all of those things, a factor of those things, even things like genetic RNG or just fateful coincidence. Because when you've got a team like Nomura, Katase, and Nijima, anything goes. But I do still think, or I like to think, that Final Fantasy VII approaches its themes, its logics, its connections, its universal lore with a much more mature and thoughtful logic. Not to mention these pillars of powerful plot points have been getting built out and expanded over compilations spanning, well, what some would deem criminal. It does mean that there are so many well fleshed out pre-existing concepts in the universe of FF7 that we do not at this point need to settle on naff answers, like KazMC. In fact, I would even argue that Square, when they built FF7, they intentionally inserted a lot of these interpretive mystery elements into it for that exact reason, to foster a wide variety of like guesses, interpretations, theories, and discussion around the game. I mean, they even told us with Remake that's what they set out to do. Mindfuck us with madness in a way that gets us talking. And while I've covered tons of the topics for the remake, the new crazy elements, the two that still get me, that still baffle me to this day, both exist in OG, and it's led me to ponder this question of where Cloud gets his strength. It's the scene where an unenhanced Cloud Strife manages to beat Sephiroth. A scene that is so baffling, so nuts, that it even defies the pretty wide boundaries of FF7's own logic. Like, Cloud was a dude who was both physically and mentally too weak to get into Soldier. By Cloud's own words, you had to be tough enough to make the cut because people like him, they just got lost in it all. The same Cloud who was too weak to even restrain an overweight elderly scientist. Like, come on. That Cloud manages to muster the strength to not only pull a sword halfway through his goddamn body, but do it while the world's strongest human being is attached to the other end. Sephiroth, a dude born with pure Genova cells. Pure, aka uncontaminated by any human DNA, like the Gillian project of Angeal and Genesis were. That's what puts Sephiroth leagues above the other, and certainly a man so many leagues above Cloud in terms of raw strength, that the fact that Cloud manages to totally overwhelm him, pick him up off the ground, and toss him straight into the live stream. Nani? Now, we've had a few versions of this scene, this Nibelheim scene. One of them was like the Last Order, where Seph, like, he voluntarily jumps in. Like, he wanted to go to the Promised Land, so he kind of like suicided in that case. But regardless, in all of the versions, what I really want to bring emphasis to is Seph's reaction. In every single one of those, the look of utter disbelief expressed by Sephiroth, you know, the statement that it's impossible, even as far as questioning what Cloud is. That is no small reaction from Seph, and it's perhaps the biggest weird in FF7, and I kind of like that it's just like this open-ended weird. I don't mind it, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a logic that we can apply to how Cloud did this, or actually quite a few. And that's the thing, I want you guys at the end of this series to vote which you see as the most likely, but what I really don't like or accept the answer of is that Cloud just suddenly took Sephiroth by surprise. Just caught him off guard. You know, Sephiroth was already a little bit injured because Cloud had managed to get a sneak attack, and like he just really didn't see it coming. I don't accept that because Cloud was also injured. He was impaled. This was no quick, like, split-second burst of power that Sephiroth had like zero time to respond to. Quite the contrary, Seph was certainly putting in a sustained effort here. His strength and grip on the Masamune was being viscerally tested, and he was beaten. Like, could adrenaline really have allowed Cloud to achieve a superhuman feat this impossible? I'm gonna say, man, yes. I'm gonna say yes, and the reason is Berserker adrenaline. So this is gonna be option 1 in probably like the 7 or 8 different potentialities we're going to be exploring. And I like this one because, as per the little Norse mythology story I told you at the start of this vid, which I'm definitely going to be expanding on in a later video, there's so much throughout FF7 that was inspired by Norse lore, whether that was from Midgar, being a reflection of Midgard, the central realm of man, accessed by a rainbow bridge that sits close to the roots of Yggdrasil, the city itself powered by the branches of the tree. Golden Saucer really does reflect the Tree of Life, the boughs stretching into the heavens. The regions in Gold Saucer separate into 9 distinct areas, precisely like the 9 kingdoms Yggdrasil connects. At the top of the tree, you have the heavens, like Asgard, the realm of the gods. And we have Dio's statue, which literally says God on it, like near the top. And then at the bottom you have Helheim, which is a place for the dishonorable souls who died, criminals, thieves, murderers. And if it wasn't obvious earlier, like Niflheim being the land of mist, and Nibelheim in FF7 being the home of Cloud. Cloud Strife, home of clouds. The references are ample and many, and they actually oddly play into the story similar to their original Norse counterparts. One of those concepts I want to explore today, and it definitely contributes to where Cloud gets his strength from, is the concepts, and these made him like even earlier into the earliest FFs. The ideas of like limit breaks and weapons enchanted through runic magic. Now, I'm sure there may be like a strong tether to early like Dungeons and Dragons inspiration there. There kind of always is with these things, but runic magic and the process of enchanting weapons were primarily a Norse concept. They were, besides just being the letters of their alphabet, runes were used for enchanting the blades of Viking warriors before battle. The most famous one of which is probably Odin's spear Gungnir. That was enchanted with rune magic so it could never miss its target. The big cool purple spear. And we see the similar use of it in things like FF6, like Celeste has the Runic ability that allows her to absorb MP with the ability. Even her job was originally listed as Runic Knight, but was removed for the North America Super Nintendo version. And we've seen loads of rune stuff like axes, rune staffs, bangles, all the way as far back as even OG FF, where the rune blade existed. It did like extra damage to magic type enemies, and also happens to be a weapon Cloud acquires later in the game. And the belief, the esoteric belief that these enchantments had real power, things like hardening your shield or guiding the accuracy of an arrow, very much emboldened these warriors in battle and their confidence, even if at the end of the day it was essentially just a placebo. But no greater do we have an example of placebo power than we do in the infamous Berserkers. Oh boy, Berserkers, these legendary fighters. They lived in the woods, separated themselves from regular society, they denied themselves the luxuries and comforts that other Norse had. I mean, that's really saying something. It's not like the average Norse folk had a lot to go around, but yeah, I love reading about these Berserker dudes just because it was such a secret, shamanistic style, esoteric cult that had a lot of like religious fervor at the roots of it. A lot of spirituality, and there's a lot to be said for just how impactful and widespread the influence of their beliefs were. Influences dating from the early spread of Indo-European, a pretty interesting branch from the root language that even made its way to India, which is why the Rig Vedas, a book that still inspires billions of people today, why it has so many direct or similar parallels to Viking Runic or Indo-Aryan language, which kind of blew my mind considering how different and far apart Scandinavian Norse and Indian Hinduism seem on face value. It didn't just stop at language, even a lot of the stories. Everything from A War in the Heavens, Aza and the Vanir fight in Norse. In Vedic, it's the Asuras and Devas. They both have stories about the creation of a magic drink, one that gets stolen by Odin, disguised as an eagle. In Vedic, Indra steals the Soma drink on the back of a giant ass eagle. Soma, mana, MP, mana potions. We're learning about real world history here, people. I'm upping the value for your time, and there's loads of other cool comparisons that I'm going to be bringing up across this series, from the sacrifice of a cosmic giant, how the world is created, how wisdom is attained. The Norse was surprisingly insightful about ideas like destiny or even cause and effect, a balance of chaos and harmony, and even within the Norse religion as it evolved, it itself changed, going from a more Dark Ages approach that really embraced death and believed that violence actually brought order to a naturally chaotic universe. Something that would obviously have sat very much at the centre of these Berserker boys' beliefs, but even that began for the rest of society, started transforming more into an altruistic and peaceful ideology. And that's why there's some contention about just how savage and warmongering we tend to think or make out that the Vikings were, and it was in part why the Berserker clan stopped getting used and eventually disbanded, even outlawed, because of the level of brutality that they would inflict when they would be unleashed upon some poor unsuspecting village. And the rest of society started thinking they were giving them a bad name, their culture a bad reputation. Which oddly, just thinking about it now, is something Cloud has in common. He gets shunned by the local villagers. But the reason I bring this point up, emphasizing how deep the spiritual aspects of their beliefs were, of which you could argue Berserkers were the most hardcore version of, their power, their strength, their determination, everything that drove these men to train in the harshest of conditions, in the fiercest of temperatures from the youngest of ages, and gain the legendary status on the battlefield that they had. It was harnessing and accessing this raw primal energy within themselves, placebo or otherwise, that they believed allowed them to access superhuman powers via a frenzy known as the Berserker gang trance. Now this heightened state of emotion, which is all it really was, allowed these men to achieve terrifying and deadly feats of prowess on the battlefield, the mystery of which just sort of added to the infamy of these Berserkers, who the average Norse started to believe that they weren't even subject to the same rules as other humans or soldiers, like laws of the universe. In fact, they speculated Berserkers had become shapeshifters of sorts, capable of transforming and embodying the power of their respective animal cult. And the animal cults were either usually the bear, the hog, or said to be the most powerful of the three, the wolf. Now the reason the wolf was considered the most powerful of the three cults is because they were the ones most commonly referred to as Odin's men. And that's a point I want you to remember, being as I'm comparing parallels of Cloud and Baldur at the start of the video. I'm comparing these two, and Baldur was a son of Odin. But we'll explore that later down the line. Anyway, I think you get the point that with the shamanistic and Norse themes tied into FF7, the idea of limit breaks, mimicking quite strongly like this Berserker gang status, and even according to the tutorials of FF7, the limit gauge itself is described as filling when the character angers. It says when pushed far enough by the enemy, they unleash an unimaginable power. Very, very Berserker gangy. So, and this really gets consolidated by the fact that the Fury status effect in FF7, it dramatically increases the rate at which the limit break builds up, while also depleting your hit rate accuracy, whereas Sadness, the status effect, does the opposite. It slows the limit break, but increases accuracy. So the notion that Cloud was able to pull off this feat against Sephiroth through a heightened state of emotion, similar to Berserker gang, that suddenly doesn't seem so impossible. Especially not when we've seen throughout the series moments similar to this, where Cloud's emotional, if you will, escalation leads him to burst out these crazy new limit breaks, like Advent Children, where he busts out a brand new, never used before power to take Sephiroth by surprise. And even more supporting of this, because remember, what I'm trying to discern with Cloud is if there's something outside of simple Mako enhancements empowering him, that he was unenhanced Cloud in this scene. Well, we've seen a similar thing before Crisis. Cloud doesn't appear much, but in the little bit he's assigned to protect a Professor Riley? I think it's Rayleigh. Because this professor carries classified soldier files. Now Cloud is still weak at this point, he's still generally quite useless, and he is throughout most of the Before Crisis, until that is, his back is pressed against the wall. With no other way out, Cloud lets out this raging battle cry, and then boom! Suddenly manages to beat the enemy, which the player Turk, or Shotgun in the Game, describes quite clearly as astounding. She even goes on to question how it was possible that Cloud could use a huge sword like that, to which Cloud simply replies, he was desperate, I don't know what happened. And even in a scenario summary of that moment in Before Crisis, it states that Cloud somehow demonstrated swordsmanship above that of a regular infantryman. So the idea that Cloud has done this before and could have in that moment matched Sephiroth's strength due to the extent of his obviously very heightened emotions. His town's just been burnt. Tifa and Zack really badly wounded. His mother's been killed. Some possibility at least. And in fact, the Crisis Core Complete Guide keyword collection states something a bit differently for limit breaks. That states that when spirit energy rises to its ultimate energy for a short while, it aligns with and emits from the body, allowing powerful abilities that cannot be performed in a natural state. When spirit energy reaches a certain resonance, it just sort of happens. Now one could even argue this Berserker gang thing, it's not exclusive to Cloud. Could even say that that's how Tifa was able to pick up the Massa Mune, an item that was rammed into our faces, that it was unwieldable by anyone else other than Sephiroth. And in fact, Tifa is a perfect example of this natural energy because she utilizes chi energy, the Buddhist and Taoist system of cultivating natural energy within one's own body, exactly akin to the Hindu and Indian chakra system. And we see in details of Zangan, Master Zangan, her teacher, who had 128 students across Gaia. His techniques entirely revolved around the discipline of performing certain moves in certain intricate patterns, as we see so tied in with Tifa's combat, to harness this chi energy. So it exists in FF7. And what really surprised me to see with historians making comparisons to the spiritual discipline of these Berserker clans, despite the savagery and getting regarded as animals by the rest of society, which they actually thought that was a compliment. They preferred it that way. It was an image that they intentionally fostered to the point that even traditional things like honouring your shield or your weapon, often passed down from Viking father to son, like they would do things like gnaw at the edges of their shields or bite the serrated metal edges of their freaking swords. I was surprised to see historians point out the real duality of this cult, that despite, they get so nuts they couldn't even discern friend from foe, which Cloud does many times throughout the game. Sort of gets in a bloodlust executioner frenzy that either Aerith or Tifa has to stop, or sometimes the bleeding planet itself. And yeah, because mental illness really run rife amongst a lot of the men in these cults. In fact, historians point it to a lot of schizophrenia, I think also epilepsy, trauma, PTSD and personality dissociation, some of the mental ailments we definitely see Cloud exhibiting throughout this game. Yeah, oddly, and the duality is there was a real grounded philosophy, a core ideology, a belief structure in place that mimicked ideas of practice, even silence, pondering on cosmic forces, detachment, ceremony, process of giving up or denying oneself's pleasures. It was real surprising to see some historians comparing it to a martial art comparable to that of the Japanese culture. And when I saw that, oh man, my brain skipped a beat, because you guys know I've been talking about the Bushido code in FF7 a lot, that it is fundamental aspect of FF7. That is what the honor, and Zack describes that you have to have dreams and honor. Same as Genesis when he was saying we've lost our honor. What they're talking about there is, I believe, the Bushido code, system of ethics that samurai lived and died for. The ultimate aspect of the Bushido code being just that, the acceptance of death. That's the legacy attached to the Buster Sword, which, oh my god, I'm just thinking, Cloud for the very first time touched it in that scene. I was going to do a vid about Cloud getting power from being Zack's living legacy, which I'll cover, but even the Buster Sword, like talking about runic weapons enchanted with powers, like I could see the Buster Sword having some sort of naturally harnessed power from the sacrifices that have happened at that sword, because Angeal, in his fight against Zack, he accepted death. In fact, he welcomed it. He wanted Zack to kill him.
Protect your honor, always.
Genesis, throughout the entirety of Crisis Core, is trying to stop the degradation. He's trying to prevent his death, and it's actually only when he finally gives in, believing he had understood the gift of the goddess, the poem Loveless, for the first time, he finally regained the honor that he had been looking for. And of course with Zack, in that final moment, standing off against all those soldiers, Zack accepted his death also. He knew he was going to die, no more than the final scene where he hands the Buster Sword off to Cloud and tells him to live. I'm feeling so much. Could that power of sacrifice, that attainment of Bushido, have somehow passed through the Buster Sword, and that when Cloud touched it, somehow maybe tapped into that lineage of like mentors and heroes in a runic enchantment kind of way. I don't know, but we could really argue that this aspect, this acceptance of death, while it might seem such a minor thing, really could be what gave Zack the power to stand against all those troops, because the Vikings also had Bushido. They believed that death got them into Valhalla, dying on the battlefield, so they kind of welcomed it. And oh my god, Zack's last stand really reminds me of the very famous Stamford Bridge Berserker story. I don't know if this is like the battle on the Big Bridge or where that ever took its reference from, but in 1066 Harold Godwinson, or Harold II, launched a counter-invasion against the Viking hordes. They were camped near Stamford Bridge, and as the story goes, a single berserker held the choke point for what some more hyperbolic sagas say was for days, but was likely only a few hours. Some sagas say it was 40 people this singular lone berserker took down before eventually someone had to sail a boat underneath and thrust a spear, I guess, up into his gooch. God damn! So I see that acceptance of death as a really potent point, very intentionally thrust into the universe of FF7, and it definitely applies to Cloud, because even right at the end of the game, he absolutely accepts death. Cloud gets real introspective. He starts talking about like what life's about, his place in the universe. Like, he starts having those thoughts, and he says it's all because of Aerith, and he says cryptic stuff like he finally understands, he gets it. Tells Tifa at the end of Northern Crater, let's go see her, to go see Aerith, who's in the live stream. And Cloud has that awakening moment. He absolutely accepted death, and in a way it transcended him. Well, while he didn't reach quite as enlightened a state with it, we could argue this Cloud in this moment fighting Sephiroth did not care about dying. His safety was not on his mind. All he wanted was to get revenge on Seph. And what I'm proposing is that pushed Cloud's spirit level energy temporarily to a point of resonance that admitted this strength. It all really freaking mimics everything the Berserkers did, from the social outcast, the mental health issues, even down to, and this is where I look at Last Order especially, because we all know that Cloud's got blue eyes and it's the Mako enhancements make him green. Well, in Last Order, they put like this green haze in Cloud's eyes that, you know, definitely could be the reflection of the Mako pool, because yeah, they're standing in a reactor above the pit of Mako. So what if Cloud is tripping balls on Mako fumes? Like, he's snorted some up his hooter, honked some up his conker, and while it's not giving him the full effect, it could have contributed somewhat to the heightening of his rage, his anger. Maybe got his head a bit woozy so he couldn't feel the pain as viscerally, so he could push through, bear down, and grit through what must have been a tremendous amount of pain. And it's very similar to plant practices of the Berserkers, because Mako is harnessed livestream energy. It is natural, and it's kind of therefore shamanistic in how it could have enhanced Cloud, because the Berserkers use plant medicine and stimulants to enhance themselves all the time. Even psychedelics, mushrooms, were often consumed by these guys before they went into battle. Now, I cannot imagine a worse setting for mushies than a goddamn battlefield, but each to their own, I suppose. I personally like to just find a nice cozy quiet corner and cry in it. So Claude may have been high, or certainly his consciousness altered. I mean, at the start of FF7 Remake, he did try to rationalize one of his hallucinations away as being maybe from the Mako fumes. We've got hit all the possibilities when it comes to consciousness in FF7, because everything is so fantasized and amplified. Like, it's even interesting to think about Placebo, because when you consider these Vikings, like the scant ragtag, often scattered factions and clans of Vikings, is these men were able to conquer and occupy huge swathes of Europe, creating an insane legacy of renown in battles, when really at the root of it all was this belief structure, this weave, this web of like sorceresses and shamans, witches and seers, weapon enchantments, all things we would call utterly insane and bogus and grounding in nothing. And yet, could it have been everything? Because at what point does a placebo stop being a placebo? We've all seen these kind of stories like the power of the mind and the subconscious mind, and Joe Dispenza does incredible research into this. It's absolutely insane what can be achieved through the power of belief. Like, these berserkers, when they were in the trance, said they were upwards of 10 times stronger, and when they came out of the trance, they were like withered old men in comparison. Again, there's so much we do not know about these berserker cults that so much of it could be really amped up. But even like real life, the placebo studies that have been done. In 99, competitive powerlifters were given a sugar pill, told it was a steroid. They lifted an average of 4% heavier weights. It's even more pronounced in untrained athletes who in 2007 were told they were receiving a strength enhancing amino acid, and they lifted 20% heavier. In 2009, runners were told they were getting super oxygenated water. The trained athletes ran 8% faster, and it was consistent across 84% of the runners tested who all ran faster. And then in 2008, trained athletes showed a 22% strength increase after they thought they had taken caffeine and being told they were lifting more weight than they actually was. It was a double placebo, and it achieved a pretty whopping result, especially for trained athletes. So if we think things like that could be achieved under those kind of superficial conditions, imagine what? Being immersed in a culture with a rigorous attention to cultivating these kind of placebo belief structures, enforced regularly and harnessed in combat. You know, it may not be shape-shifting, but it seems as real a power as any when you think about it. Like perhaps that really is the legacy attached to the Buster Sword, you know, because it's also about having dreams. Dreams which are hand-in-hand attached to or sometimes derived from memory, and all that contributes to building an image of who you are, the values you stand by, or the beliefs you fight for. Its purpose, and to have that really might be the key to that extra edge to unlock that next level of capability. And when it comes to the question of where Cloud derives his strength, the living legacy aspect is Zack sacrificing himself for Cloud and giving him the Buster Sword is part of what contributes to Cloud believing he's soldiered the entire game. Cloud has such a poor and broken self-belief structure. In a way, Zack kind of gave it to him or lent it to him. Why Cloud was willing to essentially substitute his own reality with the stories that he said he had heard from his friend Zack. It was a coping mechanism to believe that he was a well-trained veteran of a super soldier program now turned mercenary. And like Cloud said in OG, he was Cloud, the master of his own illusory world. And the Buster Sword seems like a real core emblem of that grand placebo that is giving Cloud strength. Oh my god, Tash! I gotta reiterate everything I just said to you. Try to repeat back what I just said.
You said that something about Runic, and that's actually his job, Cloud's job, and that his eyes change colour. Saying stabs inside of him.
And high berserkers on mushrooms.
Yeah, and they kill their own tribe.
They kill their own mates. And animal blood. Animal blood is a thing. I didn't even mention, but historians pointed out they think it was either psychedelics, mental health issue, or blood. And putting that together with being social outcasts, entwining that with the transcendence of the fear of death, Valhalla. And now, I cannot believe it, I'm blowing my own noodle. So I've edited this video in like multiple stages, because legit this was going to be a 15-minute video. Little new idea, goblins. Keep jumping up in my brain cave. So I already recorded the bit about Rune Knight Celeste yesterday, about rune weapons appearing throughout the series, how it ties with runic enchantments in Viking culture, and that inspired me to do the bit about the Buster Sword and how it could carry an enchantment imbued by the honor of heroes who transcended the fear of death. Well, I got thinking, I remember FF7 originally was going to have job classes, right? And I'm thinking, damn, what was Cloud? Was he a warrior? I can't really remember. I'm going to check. What if he's Berserker? That would be crazy. So I go to have a look on Final Fantasy Wiki, and what do I find? What do I find out? There's not a goddamn person in this office, and Carol doesn't exist. No, I find the list, and it's kind of as you'd expect. Tifa, martial artist. Barrett was going to be gunner. Sid the Dragoon, I think Red was just going to be like beast. Yuffie Ninja, Aerith Geomancer, Kate Sith, what was it? Sprackens D Dick, and Cloud. Cloud, goddamn Strife, was going to be a Mystic Knight. Wait. Hold up. Tash, hold on. Come, oh my god! Oh my god, Tash, come here. I've got to show these links. I looked on one Final Fantasy wiki, it just said Mystic Knight, and it's really not far off what a Rune Knight is. I mean, other subcategory names for Mystic Knight: Rune Fencer, Sorcerer, Spellblade, Spell Fencer, Weapon enchanted with runic power. Now I'm looking on this other wiki page here. Though there is no job system, Cloud Strife was listed Mystic Knight Berserker! Mystic Knight Berserker! Both? Oh my god! What? Oh my god, that is so encompassing for this video, man. I've just recorded 30 minutes. Oh, I just came to it in such a roundabout logic. I've just been waffling about runes and berserkers and now it all comes together that simply. Oh my goodness. That is crazy. I don't know within what context. Regardless, whatever the story was at that point, he would have had an emphasis on being a knight with magical imbued weaponry. And with the slash berserker though as well, oh good googly moogly, I cannot top that and I've taken enough of your time. There we go. Berserker Adrenaline with a smidge of living legacy, because we've got more to cover on that, as we have not even begun to step foot on the other mountain of juicies that I've still got in store. And that's why, as always guys, I would love to hear your thoughts. I don't know if this was very cohesively put together. I have been pinballing around the last few days with different recordings and ideas and inserts, and so forgive some of the splurginess of the info I threw into this, as well as the audio recording at some points. If you have any other thoughts, ideas, theories, conspiracies on where Cloud derives his strength from, I would love to hear it. But thank you very much for watching guys. Mush, 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 mush that subscribe button. I'm so close to 100k. Get me there. Help me achieve Silver Play Berserker gang. Smash that like button to get the YouTube algorithm worked up into a peasanty frenzy. Until the next video. Creepo. Mystic Knight and Berserker. Oh man. Yeah. Do you think I'm crazy, Tash?
No.
No. Make shit up. Now, there's no way. There's no way they're gonna buy it. No way they're gonna buy it. I came to that in a self-contained way. Some people might buy it. Just ignore them. Oh man, these sweet tater fries are so easy. These. Oh yeah, I did put salt on them. I'm gonna end the video on that. Salty chips.